Normally, we don't talk about Bruno. At least that's what Encanto tells us. Unfortunately, that's not the case this time, because we're going to have to talk about the Return of Bruno. Sit back as we attempt to unlock the Vinci Codex to prove to you that 1991's Hudson Hawk is not that bad. Welcome to this edition of It's Not That Bad, the podcast that looks for A grades in B movies. Now, I am super stoked for this one because not for the movie, but joining me on the show today is my best friend for longer than Grudge ever existed. Morgan, welcome to the show for the first time. How you doing, man?
Hello, you're going to make me blush with an intro like that. Hello, happy to be here finally.
Okay, I have to ask, because when we were talking about getting you on the show, and I said, well, what movie do you want to do? You mentioned Hudson Hawk. Why?
Yes.
Why this movie, and why do you hate me so for making me watch this?
No. It's a fantastic movie. Now, part of it is I have like really good memories of the time that I saw it. It was a really bizarre little story. But also, I watched it before any of the reviews came out, and I formed my opinion before anybody started panning it. As the reviews came out, and there was like over budget and a terrible movie, and they overdid everything. I was like, "What are you talking about? That was a delightful film." And so I have been a staunch supporter of Hudson Hawk ever since.
Okay, so you're going to have to tell the story though.
The story goes like this: the movie release date for this movie was May 24th. 1991. My birthday is May 23rd. On approximately May 20th, I was walking home from school in the rain, a sullen teenager, and as I was staring at my feet, I found a free pass to the preview for two people on the 23rd. And I was like, oh my God, my birthday present arrived in the rain. So I picked it up out of the rain, and I was dating, do you remember Gwen? I was dating Gwen at the time.
I do, yes.
And she was coming into town. And so I said, great, I have a surprise for us. We're going to go to a movie preview. And so, we went, and there was, press and all of these things. And we, just happened to be these guys in the back with the pass. And it was a great deal of fun. The audience was very lively. I glowed about the movie as we walked out of the theater, and Gwen said nothing. I was like,
"Oh wow,
you didn't like it?" She said, "Yeah, no, it was. It wasn't particularly good. It wasn't a particularly good experience for her, but I had a fantastic time, and I've been in love with the movie ever since."
I do have to make you feel old, and in doing so, I'm going to make myself feel old. You do realize that this movie is 31 years old this year, which means that you and I have known each other for over 31 years. So
we have known each other for over 31 years. That's a little ridiculous. Exactly.
I think I can feel my hair turning grayer and grayer as I mention that. But before we get but before we get into talking about this movie, it is time to take 1991's Hudson Hawk and trailerize it. If you thought Bruce Willis doing an album in the 80s was a bad idea, wait until you see what happens when someone lets him and his composer buddy write a whole damn movie. It's an hour and a half of inside jokes with a plot that can best be described as sort of there. Watch as a cavalcade of top-notch 90s talent bottom feed their way through the film that took the shine off of TriStar. Bruce Willis is Hudson Hawk. Rated R. I think I got that covered now.
That made me laugh. Not only because that's a pretty accurate description of what happens throughout the whole movie, but I owned that album by Bruce Willis with the Return of Bruno
you
on
realize
vinyl.
There was a second album.
I know. I just looked it up on Spotify this morning. I was terrified.
Wait, it's on Spotify?
It's on Spotify.
Oh, you know what I'm doing once we're done recording this? I am subjecting Carrie to this album.
You absolutely have to. I mean, it's up there with Why Can't Tori Read in terms of albums that I'm not ashamed to say I really enjoy.
Hey, I like Why Can't Tori Read. That is a phenomenal album, despite the Tori Amos teased up 80s hair with a sword behind her head on the album cover. You have to see this album cover to believe it, listeners. So this movie, Hudson Hawk, stars Bruce Willis, Danny Aiello, Andy McDowell, James Coburn, Richard E. Grant, Sandra Bernhard,
yes,
an almost unrecognizable David Caruso, and
Kit Kat,
the one and only Mr. Stallone himself, Frank Stallone, the other
That's
Stallone, right? However, this movie does have an almost starred cast list. Now, in the role of Anna that was played by Andy McDowell, the original actress that was supposed to play her character was Isabella Rossellini. She was actually cast and then had to back out. The role then went to, and I am going to apologize because I'm pretty sure I'm probably going to butcher this name, Marushka Detmers was cast, but she backed up apparently due to back problems, and then Andy McDowell got the part. Now, I am not going to lie, I am not familiar with the work of Marushka Detmers, but can you actually picture?
No, is that not somebody you go out to go see?
No and no. However, to the point of I did not even know that actress existed until I did my research for this film. However, can you honestly picture Isabella Rossellini as Anna?
Yes, I can. I can totally picture it. It would not have been as good.
Because Isabella Rossellini is a good actress, but so is Andy McDowell. But
so is Andy McDowell. The thing about Andy McDowell's performance, and it was something that struck me in my most recent watching of this film, is that although she can play that somber leading lady, she can also play silly. Mm-hmm. And if you can't get into the silly of this film, you would have stuck out like a sore thumb and it wouldn't have worked at all. But the film is silly and the actors know it's silly and they're being silly the whole way through. And Andy McDowell pulls that off and she brings this lighthearted romance comedy feel to the whole thing through her silliness.
Mm-hmm. This movie was directed by Michael Lehman. This was his third ever film that he directed. His first was Heathers. So coming off of a really good dark comedy and then jumping into this bit of a downhill, just a bit.
Well, the resume says it should have been a little bit more than it was.
Now, listeners of this podcast will recognize the name of Michael Lehman because we've talked about him before because he directed Airheads. He also directed The Truth About Cats and Dogs, which I absolutely love that movie. Of course, I also like I like Jean Garofalo. You can't go wrong with her. As mentioned in the trailer, this was actually the story for this movie was written by Bruce Willis and Robert Kraft. Now, before you start sitting there going, the what? New England Patriots fans, sit down. It's not the owner of the New England Patriots. It's a different Robert Kraft. Let me explain. Robert Kraft is a composer and he's done music for a ton of different movies. It was actually in charge of film scoring for Fox Corp and all that. If you've ever watched Score, it's a documentary on music scores. He's heavily involved in that. He was playing at this club with his group, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, in the crowd, someone pulls out a harmonica and starts jamming with him. That someone is one bartender, Bruce Willis, because apparently Bruce Willis just loved all the music that Robert Kraft was doing. So the two of them, basically Robert Kraft was like, okay, you're cool. It's all good. I'm going to let you kind of join in on this and you can write the lyrics for this song. And the song was called The Hudson Hawk. So they basically wrote this song that was the beginning of these two characters that were eventually played by Bruce Willis and Danny Aiello. And apparently it's one of those things where they were like, you know what? If one of us is ever in a position to make a film, we're going to make this film. We're going to make The Hudson Hawk. Cue Moonlighting and Die Hard, and Bruce Willis has got all this clout, and he makes The Hudson Hawk with Robert Kraft. I love this story, but it's one of those things where yeah.
The script plays that's how it came about. It looks like a bunch of friends got together on a weekend and made a movie. Mm-hmm. They said, let's make a heist movie. Let's all get together and just like goof around and have a good time with it. We'll make things explode. We'll have Leonardo da Vinci in it. It'll be great.
And it's funny because as I was reading or doing my research and reading up on all this information, because I started doing my research kind of like halfway through the movie, and reading that part, I'm just like, it gave me a much deeper appreciation for what was on what I was watching, which is kind of cool. However, the end result, this is one of those hindsight things. When friends get, really good ripping drunk and they're like, you know what, man, when we make it big, we're going to start a bar together. We're going to run a bar. It's going to be all good. We're going to call it this and that. And like, yeah, that's a good idea when you're drunk.
Cocktails and dreams.
Yeah, cocktails and dreams. Please don't sober up. Okay. However, while Bruce Willis was promoting the movie 12 Monkeys, he said in an interview that if he could travel anywhere in time, he would go back to just before production began on Hudson Hawk and stop himself from making the movie. That's
Bruno,
the hindsight.
So.
Oh, he turned on the movie. Now I have to mention the quote unquote accolades, and sometimes a movie does get some good accolades, and sometimes it is fair for the Razzies. And at the 12th annual Razzies, Hudson Hawk quote unquote cleaned up. It won for Worst Picture. Michael Lehmann won for Worst Director, and the movie won for Worst Screenplay, but we're not done there. Bruce Willis was nominated for Worst Actor, but he lost to Kevin Costner for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
That was the right call.
Richard E. Grant was nominated for Worst Supporting Actor. He lost to Dan Aykroyd for the movie Nothing But Trouble. Sandra Bernhard was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress. She lost to Sean Young for A Kiss Before Dying. Now, there's a caveat on the Sean Young, because Sean Young in the same movie was nominated for Worst Supporting Actress and Worst Actress because she played twins. So she won. So Sean Young won for Worst Actress, the twin that lived, and she won for Worst Supporting Actress for the twin who died. I love how this plays out, but yet still somehow Sandra Bernhard didn't win. So
and you know what? I don't know with Sandra Bernhard whether or not that's actually what she's like aiming for in her performances. There's something about a Sandra Bernhard performance it's not unlike watching a car accident. You know it's not good. You don't want to be a part of it, but you can't really stop from watching it.
It's like Gilbert Gottfried in female form. It's just not,
Yes, that's an accurate description.
So in total, this movie, Hudson Hawk, tied for second in total nominations at the Razzies that year was 6. The film that had the most Razzie nominations at the 12th annual Razzies was Cool as Ice, starring Vanilla Ice, with 7 nominations. Also, at the 1991 Stinkers Bad Movie Awards, this movie did not win Worst Picture, but it was in the final 5 nominations. Nothing But Trouble won for that one. So it's not
competition that year.
I tell you, right? Do you feel good or bad for winning worst movie? Like, yay, we won. What did we win? Oh crap, we won.
Well, I mean, it lets you know that you were committed to whatever you were doing. You went all the way with it. If you're going to go wrong with flair, and they certainly did in this film. Commit all the way with every single bit. So
you realize,
I don't know, they didn't win best film, but they won worst film, so they were at one end of the spectrum.
So that'll be the name of the sequel, Hudson Hawk 2, Wrong But Strong. I like it. We mentioned,
I would love a sequel.
Oh my god,
it would be awesome.
Oh my god.
In fact, Anyway, carry on. Sorry, there's so much I want out of this film, but I have so many spin-off ideas that we can talk about.
Oh dear God! Are we going to get drunk and we're going to come up with an idea saying, if ever we have the power to make a Hudson Hawk 2, wrong but strong, this is how it's going to be, and we're going to do this together. Oh God, we're going to make that pact, aren't we?
Yeah, except it's not going to be wrong but strong. It's going to be Revenge of the Candy Bars.
Yes. Butterfinger. Oh, Butterfinger. This film, I mentioned earlier on that it kind of took the shine off of TriStar, because this was one of the last films that TriStar did before kind of being rescued by Sony. It was a $65 million budget with a worldwide gross of $17 million total. But it didn't start so bad though. You mentioned May 24th, 1991, this film hits the big screen. It debuted at number 3 that week with a $7 million total take at the domestic box office. Number 1, the debut, was Backdraft, which is a phenomenal movie. Yes. Just not Backdraft 2. And yes, there is a Backdraft too. In second place was What About Bob, which, again, classic. Also debuting this week. So Hudson Hawk did better than these debuting movies, okay? I'm going to say this again. Hudson Hawk did better than these debuting movies. At number 7 was Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken. At number 5 was Only the Lonely. And at number 4 was Thelma and Louise. No. Hudson Hawk debuted better than Thelma and Louise. It's got to take a second to sink in.
Just how big a draw Bruce Willis was.
Mm-hmm. Which is surprising too, because when you think about it, this came out a year after, and he put out 3 films in 1991, one of them good. The good one was Die Hard 2. Basically, John McClane at Christmas again, at the airport. Yeah. The other 2, Look Who's Talking To. Now, admittedly, he's just the voice of Mikey, so he can kind of get away with that. Like voice work, it's all good. But this came out the year after Bonfire of the Vanities, which is known as
for him.
That was not good. It was not good. So it makes you wonder though if Bonfire of the Vanities maybe took some of the shine off of what Bruce Willis could do, and that probably affected what the critics rated this. Currently, 31 years later, this film sits at a 33% Rotten Tomato meter with a 56% audience score, but over at Metacritic, it's lower. It's at a 17 Metascore. So I'm going to put this to you before we get to the breakdown. 17% Metascore, 33% Tomatometer, or 56% audience score. Who's closer to you, do you think, to what this movie actually should be sitting at?
It's definitely the audience score. I know it's not a marvelous movie, and there's all sorts of errors in just simple basic filmmaking they make through the whole thing, but it's a lot of fun. It's a romp. And it is unapologetically silly. It's a good time. I don't think 17% is anywhere near. 33%, we're getting closer. I think 56% is probably the most accurate representation.
I do have to admit that I love the fact that we're doing a Bruce Willis film in a year where the Razzies actually have a category for worst Bruce Willis film of the year. That's because he's put out, I think, like 7 films in 2021. 7. And none of them are good. None of them are good. Like it's not even close. Like there are 2 movies in there that have a 0% tomato meter. Like it's not good. What? Oh yeah.
Which ones?
Out of Death is one of them. Which, how are you out of death? Did you run out of death? Are you handing death out to people? Sorry, all out of death. Come back tomorrow.
We ran out.
we've got supply line issues. We're all out of death today. Sorry.
Yeah.
So Bruce Willis, 31 years later, is all out of death, but we are all out of stats. So it's time to get to the breakdown here. We have to start at the top of the billing. Bruce Willis, Hudson Hawk himself. How was Bruce Willis for you?
Admittedly, he actually wasn't my favorite part of this. He has some moments, he has some bits where he actually is like committing to the thing. But a lot of the time, he's just kind of walking through it and throwing off lines. And you get the sense in a lot of it that they're taking let's just do one more take. Just give us something fresh. And that's the take that they took in a lot of it. So Bruce Willis is okay in this one.
It is interesting because it does come after two different Die Hard movies. So you get even though John McClane is a bit of a quippy action hero, it's still like a classic action film. But this reminded me not of John McClane. It reminded me of, if I remember the character name correctly, David Addison from Moonlighting, yes. Because that was much more, that's much more in line with kind of like the character that he's playing in Hudson Hawk. Like,
I would agree.
Moonlighting was such a fun, quirky comedy in an era where you had shows like The Scarecrow, Mrs. King, shows like that. Like Moonlighting was an absolute gem, and really what brought Bruce Willis to become the big megastar that he was at the time. And you cannot deny that Bruce Willis was box office gold for a big stretch of the 90s, regardless of how out of depth he might be today. But this played to Bruce Willis's comedic talents, and they are there. They are definitely there. You have to think that in later years, he becomes almost a caricature of his action hero self. I love to see when actors get to that point where they're just like, okay, I'm done taking myself seriously. Chuck Norris is there. Chuck
Norris is there. I think this is why Bruce Willis has had such a string of bad films, because at this point, it's all just kind of meta Bruce Willis. We got peak actor during the Pulp Fiction 12 Monkeys days, but I don't think he's really putting in the acting department these days.
Mm-hmm. In a sci-fi realm, because he did go a big stretch of doing a lot of sci-fi films, and a lot of them were really good. I love Surrogates, and of course you have to mention The Fifth Element. The Fifth Element is just so much fun.
You have to mention The Fifth Element,
and and Dallas has a lot of that humor that you saw, not just in Moonlighting, not just in Die Hard, but in Hudson Hawk as well. So if you like, quirky, fun, quippy Bruce Willis with hair, which, you have to remember, he had hair back then. It was receding, but he had hair, right? This was arguably the best Bruce Willis era, and the comedy that he put out in it was maybe some of the better aspects of what he was doing in the 90s. But a lot of it did feel a little bit more slapstick. But I know apparently when they were writing this script, they were going for that Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin kind of feel, and you can kind of see that between him and Danny Aiello.
You get it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's Danny Aiello who really he's one of the things that I love about this film. Can we move on to Danny at this point?
Oh, that I like your segue. Yes, let's move on to Danny Aiello. Screw Hudson Hawk. Let's get to Danny Aiello.
Screw Danny Aiello is brilliant in this film. He doesn't pull any punches. He goes all the way with this Tommy Five-Tone character. He runs the bar. He's the best friend. He's the betrayer. He's the redeemer. He's got the quirky punchline. Did I miss anything? Right? And he keeps bringing it scene after scene after scene. And every time you cut to him, you can see that he's there and he's on. This is, in fact, one of my favorite things that I've ever seen Danny Aiello in. He's done so many fantastic things, of course, throughout his entire career, but this is by far one of my favorite, top three at least.
Knowing the origin of this script, the creation of these characters from Bruce Willis and Robert Kraft, and you have to think that as they're writing it, a lot of those personalities of each other kind of go into these characters. So Hudson Hawk is very much Bruce Willis, which makes you think that Danny Aiello is patterned after Robert Kraft, and just seeing the way, and because Danny Aiello and Bruce Willis were friends before this movie started. It apparently was like one of those
very close.
Yeah, apparently it was like we're going to get Danny Aiello because that's that, right? But you have to think that some of the character of Danny Aiello in this film probably comes from Robert Kraft, and when you realize the origin of the script and like the passion project that it is for these two, you see the camaraderie between Danny Aiello and Bruce Willis in this, and it makes you smile a little bit more because that means two friends hung out, created these characters, created this story, actually lived up to a promise that they made each other, and regardless of how well the film did or how well it didn't, spoiler alert, it didn't do well, but still, like that their friendship made this film happen, which makes this film that much more enjoyable because it is that dream come reality.
And when you watch them together, every scene, it's just the pair of them, particularly that first third of the film where it's mostly just the two of them. They look like they're just having a really good time in every scene. Like you can see that the energy is there, that they're clicking, that the timing feels good. I imagine the set must have been a riot to be on, but they produced some really good scenes out of this.
It is interesting because there are reports that Bruce Willis and Michael Lehman kind of clashed while making this film, and we'll get to the direction in a little bit there. But it's if there was tension on the set between Bruce Willis and Michael Lehman, because this really is Bruce Willis's passion project, and Michael Lehman's brought on to direct it, and if this is only Michael Lehman's third film at the time. And, here's Bruce Willis throwing around his Die Hard weight, it's, you have to think that, if there's that tension, it didn't show in the performance by Bruce Willis, especially when he was with Danny Aiello. It's like that is a friendship right there in writing.
You can see it.
Yeah.
It comes off in the whole thing. It comes off in where else how many times do you see Danny Aiello singing in films?
Right.
You never see it. But in this film, he sings. Like he's right out there and singing. He's having a very good time.
We talked about Andie MacDowell at the beginning of the podcast a little bit. I think you're right. I think they definitely got the right person for this movie because as good an actress as Isabella Rossellini is, I just cannot picture her sitting there staring off into the distance and making dolphin noises because, that happened.
What does the color blue taste like? I can't see her uttering that line. Like that would not be somebody squeezing her ears and having her make dolphin noises just wouldn't be in her wheelhouse, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, Andie MacDowell is just an absolute gem to begin with. The nice thing about it is that despite dolphin noises aside, there's a lot of over the top in this film. But I like the fact that she's kind of pulled back a little bit and kind of grounds everybody around her because again, if you have too many people quipping through the whole film, that it becomes Ghostbusters Answer the Call. It becomes, when everyone wants to be the Bill Murray, someone's got to be the Egon, right? So
yes, and she fulfills that role beautifully. Mm-hmm. She's, as you say, she's grounded. She brings that her delivery of lines, where she has that light voice, but she with such impact with every single line. She's almost whispering against all of the bravado that's coming off from Aiello and Willis. And of course, trying to be in the same room with Sandra Bernhard and trying to play the quiet role and still hold a presence. You can't just get that from any actor. Like, not anybody can just pull that off, but there she is. There's Andie MacDowell, just quietly commanding a room as she quietly plays this nun spy in the midst of this madcap adventure.
Which dolphin sound making nun spy. I'm all for that film. I am all
Absolutely.
for that film.
That should be it. So we should get the backstory on that one.
Why did she feel she needed to go, for dolphin noises? I don't know, but we'll go there. You mentioned Sandra Bernhard.
Oh yes.
I'm actually going to step away from this one because and I don't mean this as a slight against her. I just don't know if there's a movie that I like her in. And it's one of those things where...
See, and I'm the exact opposite. I don't know that there's a movie that I have not liked her in, because I
want to hear this now.
Every time.
Okay, so sell me on Sandra Bernhard here, because I don't want to sit here and crap all over her, but I want to hear from someone who loves her in her roles. What is it about Sandra Bernhard?
She defies every expectation for a leading lady, or even a supporting actress, which is most often the roles that she ends up getting. She is not classically beautiful. She does not have a smile to launch 1,000 ships. She does not have a delicate voice. She comes out as loud and brash, and she's honest about it every time, and she's unapologetic. More than that, she leans into it. She makes it part of the characters that she plays. And at no point does she claim to be anything other than she is. And she brings that sort of different dimension to those female characters that you can see in cinema. When you get a Sandra Bernhard character that you're not going to get some Mary Sue that's all of a sudden coming in. You're not going to get some classic trope. You're going to get something that is off the wall, that is probably inappropriate at some point in time. And she's just going to lean into it without apology. She's got varying levels from loud to very loud, but it's all in that range. And that's what you're going to get with a Sandra Bernhard character. And she brings a texture to everything that she does. Like you can't put Sandra Bernhard in a film and not expect parts of it to be crunchy. She's the little texture that you bring, like putting just a little bit of crunch in your bacon. You throw a little Sandra Bernhard in there just to add a little bit of texture. And I think she does that with everything that she brings to the film.
I think for me, for this film, and by the way, I'm now, based on how you just described that, maybe I can go into her films and be almost prepared for that. But I think in this one, and just maybe hear me out on this one here, I talked about too much crazy on screen, and we cannot deny that Richard E. Grant brought a whole lot of maniacal crazy to his role as well. So the two of them being kind of out crazying each other, it reminds me of Batman Forever. You had Jim Carrey as the Riddler,
yes,
and you had Tommy Lee Jones trying to Jim Carrey his way through Two-Face, and it just became a little too much. Like I almost wanted Tommy Lee Jones to pull it back. A, Two-Face is not that crazy, but B, when you've got too crazy like that, like where's the difference? Where's the contrast?
I will accept that note. I think in this one, we between Grant and Bernhard, it was a lot, and it was a lot to take. There weren't too many scenes where it was where they had it toned down. There was about a 5-second clip there in Italy just before Bruce Willis and Danny Aiello fall off the balcony where they're a little bit restrained. But no, for the most part, they're both over the top. I mean, and those were the characters as they were written. I don't know if this is a performance issue, or if this is, in fact, at the end of the day, a script issue. That, in fact, they maybe wanted to write them slightly differently.
Speaking of Richard E. Grant, loved him in Loki. Just loved him in Loki.
Oh, so good.
And he does pull off these over-the-top characterizations when he's in there. I was getting some real hardcore Nick Cage vibes as I'm watching his performance in this.
It's funny you mentioned that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Like almost like that face-off Nick Cage kind of, pull his face off. It's like, okay, dial it down, Nick Cage. Okay, go back to the City of Angels, Nick Cage. You're kind of scaring me. I'll put the bunny down, Nick Cage. Like, seriously. but
he's definitely got those vibes in this film. Richard E. Grant does. There was something. I mean, and you mentioned Nick Cage, and that was somebody else who probably could have played this role. Actually, as you mentioned it, he might have been able to pull it off. But Richard E. Grant does know how to go for those over-the-top moments, and he does, in his acting, bring those big, big energy moments. And what's funny, though, is when you watch this film, unlike Sandra Bernhard, who is over the top at every beat for every moment of the time that she's on screen, Richard E. Grant just kind of projects that energy that he's going to be over the top, but he actually is only filling the amount of space and time that he needs to. Again, that wonderful limo scene. He only gets enough energy to fill that limo space, whereas when Sandra Bernhard's in the limo, she's still filling all of Italy with that energy. He's much more what's the word I'm looking for here?
Like
surgical,
small package combustible.
Small package combustible moments. And I think in that respect, in the Battle of the Crazy, I think he takes this one just a little bit better, if not for nothing else than the fact that he's got a little bit more control over his crazy.
Okay, so I know you, like myself, are a Doctor Who fan. If you take Richard E. Grant's character from this and you take that same characterization, that same energy, and you make him the master, not Doctor Who, but you make him the master. Tell me Richard E. Grant wouldn't be such a good master.
Oh, he would be fantastic. It would be wonderful. It would be a worthy portrayal of the master in all of his nuance and craziness.
Oh, the universe!
I would watch that.
The universe needs to make this happen. Stephen Moffat, if you are actually listening to this show right now, A, thank you, but B, go ahead, take the idea. It is yours, free of charge. All good. The world will thank you, but give us a high five. Send me a little TARDIS toy. I'm fine with that. James,
consulting credit, anything.
Exactly. I'll take it. I'll take an executive producer credit for that episode. It's fine. James Coburn, smooth talking, so good and so evil at the same time. Like there's just, with every smile and every sneer, it's just he oozes a whole ton of goodness into this character.
He's, again, I mean, the cast, just looking at the cast for this film, you get blown away by the number of huge acting names that are in this. And having James Coburn just kind of thrown in to this ridiculous little rogue CIA agent role, running these new CIA young shots. And he does... And he just brings it. Like he says, great, that's the character. I'm going to play it. And he brings all of that James Coburn gravitas and charm and wit and timing. Like you just can't buy stardom like that. Like he brings so much credibility to the film just by the moments that he's on screen. It's really quite funny.
He literally brought a smile that was basically your death warrant in this one.
Yes.
Like, just he's smiling now. He's going to stab you in the back later, but he's smiling now. And that smile says, I'm going to stab you in the back, and you know it's going to come. But and
then he smiles at everybody, and he's just screwing everybody every step of the way. It's so good.
And it's not even sociopathic. It's very almost, it's more maniacal. But like very restrained maniacal.
And when he talks about how he misses communism, and of course, 1991, communism hadn't been gone that long at that point.
Right.
But it is that callback to that energy from Dr. Strangelove. It's that same sort of Cold War psychopathic United States intelligence energy that everybody loved to consume for a long time because the ends justified the means. And he's playing that, and he's playing it with gusto as a character who's like, no, this is why I got into this, man. Like this is what I get up for breakfast for. Let's do this.
He's literally the CIA guy who doesn't want to admit that the Cold War is over. So he's doing these these plots and ruse and machinations, because it's almost like he needs it. He needs something to be going on so he can justify his own personality. I get so much in James Coburn.
So good.
There's a lot of smaller character roles in this that kind of stood out for me here. And I want to start with one that's it's a great performance with an unfortunate character name here. It's Lorraine Toussaint, who plays Almond Joy.
Yes. I didn't recognize her. I didn't remember that that's who played that role until I just went back and rewatched it. I went, oh my God, she's so young.
And it's one of those things where it's like, if ever there is one person in this film that might be competent in what they are doing, because everyone doesn't seem to have a clue what they're doing. They're kind of like, do a little plot here, do a little backstab here, punch Bruce Willis in the face here, give him some kind of knockout drug. I don't know how many times. I think Bruce Willis was knocked out or put to sleep more often than Boba Fett went to sleep in the Bacta tank in the Book of Boba Fett, and I'm talking the entire series. Like he spent a lot of time just out.
He did, and they moved him around continents. I was thinking about that when I was trying to figure out what the script motivation was, and then I remembered, oh right, Hudson Hawk just got out of jail. Probably doesn't have a passport. It's probably the easiest way to get him to Italy this quickly.
Right? Which, by the way, if you want to get to Italy real fast, that would be the way to go. And with that would be the way to go. Right? And with that many packing peanuts, just that's a nice comfy ride.
It would be a good sleep.
If you can stand the, sub-zero temperatures at 45,000 feet in the plane while you're flying, but it's a minor thing.
That's what the sleeping pill is for, or injection in this case.
but when you have characters like Kit Kat that was played by David Caruso, and you have characters like Butterfinger, who are these, and then the Germans that never talked, like Icky and Uger, whatever their names were, right? Like you have these so out there characters that Almond Joy just seems like, well, we got to have someone who knows what the hell they're doing.
Yes. And she takes that role. And again, when we talk about those beats that ground the film, everybody around her is being ridiculous and silly and campy. And she comes in this role with it's just a little bit more pessimistic and snide and a little bit more realistic about the world. And she brings a grounding to those moments. Even in the midst of this Cold War boss who's ordering her around, she's going to do her job. She's going to do it well, but she doesn't have to be happy about it.
Yeah, it's almost like she's the one character that would like pause for a moment and go, I'm surrounded by idiots, and then just continue to do her job.
Exactly.
Because
she plays the role brilliantly.
Mm-hmm. Because and Butterfinger does not know what the hell he's doing. Although I do love the little things. There's like, read your book. He starts reading Green Eggs and Ham. It's like, to yourself. To yourself. Like Butterfinger's just like, you almost want to hug him. Even though he'll probably break you with the return hug. You almost want to hug him. And then,
but he would be smiling the whole time.
And then to realize that that's David Caruso as Kit Kat.
Oh,
like
it's...
You have to, Mark, I'm going to let you explain Kit Kat to our listeners, because I don't know if I can give Kit Kat's character justice in this.
You know the stereotypes, the tropes. You always need somebody who's the master of disguise. And Kit Kat in this particular masterpiece is that character. He comes in and he's always changing costumes and he's dressing up as something else. He doesn't say a word. Doesn't actually talk through the entire thing. He's got all these little cards that he brings out and snaps in front of you, like he's an old-timey silent film. There's this beautiful scene where he does Hudson Hawk, where he comes up dressed as Hudson Hawk and he stands behind Bruce Willis and he's mocking Bruce Willis's hand gestures, which you guys can't see me doing right now, but I'm doing them right now. And right at the end of the beat, of course, Hudson Hawk, knowing that Kit Kat's behind him, just kind of elbows him in the nose. And Kit Kat takes it and goes,
yeah,
and then hands him a card. Watch out for the blue wire. And then he shows up in all these places. He at one point in the scene, he's dressed as a statue. You have no idea it's Kit Kat until somebody calls to him, Kit Kat, and his head turns. You go, oh my God, there he was the whole time. He's been standing there the whole scene in this statue role.
The fascinating part of this is, go ahead, go watch this movie, and pick out Kit Kat, right? And then go watch First Blood, because he's in that too. And it's just such a difference. Like beyond, like if Kit Kat were to put on sunglasses and then all of a sudden the Who kicks in, so we get our seat. Like, no. You can't watch this movie and then go watch him in like CSI Miami. You just cannot happen.
The CSI in Miami's the bass gravelly roles that he plays.
Mm-hmm.
This is not that. There's something about this where he never speaks a word, but you can tell that there's something about this character that is cool. not trying to be cool, but rather just like that guy who has no idea he's cool. He's just kind of doing his thing. And that's Kit Kat. He's just this guy doing his thing, with a tragic ending, unfortunately. But, he holds up that card for Andy Aiello. It's just, or Andy McDowell, rather. And it's like, I always liked you. It's like, oh, Kit Kat, your dying words.
We have to be very honest about this film, though, and that there are some issues with it. And I'm curious. There's a few. But I wonder where those problems come from. Is it from the script, or is it from the director? Is it like, to you, again, knowing that this is, one of your like all-time fave Bruce Willis movies, if you're being honest with yourself and really critiquing this film, where does it lag? I
think part of it is a script problem. They either needed to make it just a little bit tighter, or they needed to make it longer. They really needed to take the time to tell all of the bits of the story that they were cutting out. So undoubtedly, some of the problem is script. I think, though, that direction ultimately ended up being the thing that sunk this film. I don't think our director, Michael Landon, was ultimately on board with the vision that Bruce Willis had for this film. And of course, if you're acting in a film that you've written, and you've got the director sort of in between you and your script, and it's not running well, you're not going to get the best performance out of everybody. You're not going to get the scenes that you want to create out of the whole thing. If you don't have a cohesive vision between your actors and your director, it's just not going to work. And so I think if we have to lay blame somewhere, that's probably where I'd put it.
See, and I'm curious too, because as mentioned before, we did talk about Airheads on this show, and there was another movie where you had a very large cast with some very, capable of being over the top actors, Brendan Fraser at the time, Adam Sandler.
Yes.
Like you have these actors, but yet they were pulled back. Like even Adam Sandler was pulled back. Buscemi was like, everyone kind of played their role, and everyone was kind of balanced and crazy when they needed to be, but not everyone was being crazy at the time. So there was a really good balancing of the talent on screen in Airheads, but at times it felt like this was like, it almost felt like Animaniacs on steroids, with all the pratfalls and the physical comedy that was kind of going on, and some of the especially near the end. By the way, 31-year-old film. I'm not even saying spoilers. If you haven't seen it by now, that's on you guys. But there's the fight between James Coburn and Bruce Willis at the end of this. That is literally may as well have Looney Tunes music behind it, because it is so cartoonish.
Oh, it's so campy, and it sticks out as not being in tone with the rest of the film. I mean, that whole shtick with getting Bruce Willis to go backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, and then Coburn's setting up to drop kick him, and Bruce Willis stops and says, "Oh, my hat," and then Coburn goes flying over him and over the wall. It's like, that didn't really fit with everything else. I mean, yes, it was a slapsticky kind of comedy, but that really was much more Buster Keaton than the rest of the film warranted.
You know what it reminds me of? I'm gonna bring up the movie Airplane. Airplane, first of all, is just comedy gold, right? Like if you haven't, sat there on a spring day while the baseball game is in rain delay, and all of a sudden Airplane comes on, and if you don't sit there and watch it, you're missing out on something. And everyone kind of plays it straight while all the crazy's happening around them. And that's really part of the comedy gold, except for one guy in the air traffic control tower, and he's the one who's like just so over the top, and all his lines seem so forced and all that. Right. And I'm just like, if I had to change one thing in Airplane, I'm taking this character out, because he doesn't really belong around everyone else. It's like, we have to have a flamboyant character. Let's just let him make all these crappy jokes and
the screaming over the top. Yeah. The obvious jokes that are coming. And yes, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
This film has some of those moments.
Some. Let's be honest, some.
It's kind of punctuated with these moments the whole way through, where they're just like, we might have been able to do without that punchline. We probably could have been okay there.
But to the same token as well, there was some talk that this film was kind of misrepresented when it came to advertising, because you think about it, the theaters know and the movie companies know that they've got, Die Hard 2, Die Hard, big action star Bruce Willis in this movie. This is the driving factor behind this film. So when promotional material was put out for this film, it was promoted more like an action film and not the slapstick pratfall comedy that it really is. So I wonder if people went into this, much like yourself to the premiere, if you went into this saying, okay, well, I saw the trailers, I'm pretty sure I kind of know what to expect. And then you walk in and you get whiplash from the complete tonality change by the end of the film. Like you said, like it's like, like a Looney Tunes sketch. It's like, did you feel like a bait and switch when you first went to see this film?
I think this is why I enjoyed the film so much, because I knew nothing. I hadn't seen any trailers. The only reason I was going to this film was because I found a free pass in the rain. I knew nothing about it. So for me, there was no tonality switch. I came in, I accepted it for what it was straight off the top, and I absolutely fell in love with it. Having gone back and watched the trailers afterwards, I'm like, no, you guys are totally misrepresenting this film. If I was going to the theater to see what was presented in the trailers, I would have been really, really upset, because that's not what that film is at all.
That's like doing a trailer for Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and treating it like a documentary. You're going to confuse your audience.
It would. And if you were trying to build it as sort of a high quality documentary on top of that, you watch this film, this is not a high quality film. They did not break the bank making this film.
No, they broke their own bank.
They broke their own bank.
I think they broke Sony's bank, because they had to go in and buy the rest of the stock and do a full reorg. If you ever watch the Robot Chicken episode where they have, Pluto Nash Day, because Pluto Nash was one of those movies where it's like people probably lost their jobs on that one. I guarantee you people probably lost their jobs because of Hudson Hawk, because it did so poorly. But the bait and switch kind of reminded me too of if you remember the movie Event Horizon. When the trailers were out, I'm like, oh yeah, this is a really cool sci-fi plot, and I love sci-fi films, and I'm going to go into this. And I started going, and like the first 3/4 of the film, it's like, this is a really cool sci-fi film. I'm right into this. It's all good. And then there's 20 minutes left of the film, and all of a sudden entrails are spewing out, and it's turned into a horror film, and somehow they've gone to hell because they went through. I'm like, what's going on here? Why? But then if you go in to watch it the second time, knowing that it's a horror movie with a slow build, you can appreciate it more. So I think it's one of those things where, to our listeners, if you're listening to this, go into Hudson Hawk. Don't watch the trailers. Don't watch the trailers and forget everything that you've heard about it. Go ahead, read up the story about how Bruce Willis and his buddy Robert Kraft wrote this script together, like good buddies kind of thing, like kept their dream come true. Enjoy the friendships that you see on screen, and go in thinking that, and I think you'll enjoy it a little bit more than taking a look at a Metascore and going, yee, maybe not. So it's come to this point of the show, so I have to put it to you, Morgan. Who is your MVP of 1991's Hudson Hawk?
It's a tough call. I've been waiting for this question, and I have to. It's between Danny Aiello and Andy McDowell, and I think at the end of the day, I have to give it to Andy McDowell. She was probably the outsider in making this film. She was sort of flown in for the role, and she nails it the whole way through. I have to go with Andy McDowell as my MVP.
I'm not going to lie. I had Andy McDowell on my list of, on my short list for the best part of this film. And I also had Lorraine Toussaint actually as a short list nominee as well. But I have to go with Danny Aiello.
Do you?
Bruce,
I can see it.
Bruce Willis is a little over the top. And as much as I enjoyed seeing Bruce Willis be fun again, and that's, I think, part of it too, what I really enjoyed about this. We have been inundated over the last 31 years with dead serious, shaved head action star Bruce Willis, who's all out of death. And then we kind of get to go back to this and realize that, oh yeah, he was a lot of fun.
And that is one of the things that makes this film really, really enjoyable, even on repeated watches, is you can see that he's having a good time while he's making it. It's a shame that he doesn't view it fondly in retrospect, because I think you had a good time at the time, most of the time. And you get to see him out and about in public, and he's very personable, and there's a lot about this role that's much more like the genuine Bruce Willis.
If Bruce Willis ever goes back to doing movies, maybe not necessarily like this, but he started to with Red. Like, I really enjoyed the comedic aspect of Red. I'll be honest, I haven't actually watched Red 2, just because, they struck gold with Red. They really did. But going back to doing more quirkier films, like the whole 9 yards.
Well, the whole 9 yards. That was what I was just going to mention. When he does these quirkier films, I mean, yes, he's still playing sort of the criminal, the gangster, the New York crime scene kind of character, and there's always that sort of similar element to all of these. But he plays them well, and he seems to have fun doing it, and it's fun to watch him play those sorts of roles.
And that, I think that's the biggest thing, is that between Bruce Willis and Danny Aiello, you saw the fun that made the movie happen between Bruce Willis and Robert Kraft, because clearly Danny Aiello is the embodiment of what Robert Kraft is to Bruce Willis. It just so happens that he's also his friend as well. Like, just watching these guys have fun for an hour and 40 minutes, and again, knowing what it took to get this film made, regardless of the outcome. Bruce Willis, good on him for having fun with it, but Danny Aiello is the smile inducer of this film. Morgan, thank you so much for coming onto the show and talking Hudson Hawk. I'm going to have to bring you back on here. We're going to talk another horrible movie somewhere down the road.
We'll do it again. We'll do something else.
Oh, absolutely. And to you, the listeners, here's the deal. If you think there is a movie that is unfairly maligned, or that you think is so bad that there is no way in hell that we're going to find anything good to say about it, hit me up on Twitter at NotThatBadCast. Toss a movie out there. We'll watch it, we will dissect it, and we will find the A grades in those B movies. This has been It's Not That Bad. I'm Jay Morgan. Thank you so much for this. We will catch you all next time.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, Skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.